I would like to think we make everybody better, but I'm sure there's a good 15–20% who don't really improve as much as they'd like to. And part of this is related to the fact that some of their problems, there are two types of allergy. There's called allergic rhinitis, which is dust, pollen, mold, mildew, and then there's called vasomotor rhinitis, which is where things like climate changes and air conditioning, things we can't have any control over or give a shot for, can cause just as much problem in some people. And when we feel like that maybe is the case, we try to pinpoint specifically what that is. And then also there are what we call concomitant foods, meaning, and the best example is if you're allergic to ragweed during watermelon season, and when planting season, plants, vegetables are starting to really produce big time, watermelon, cucumbers, etc. Some people notice, well, I'm allergic to ragweed, and I ate a watermelon, and boy, I felt like yuck after that for a good while. Well, probably the cucumber or the watermelon was aggravating the problem to a degree, because we know that there's certain types of foods with certain types of pollens called what we call concomitant allergies that tend to aggravate each other. It's not everybody, but if a person does notice that, then we have my trials that will stay away from that for a while and see how you do otherwise. Well, there's several types of skin tests. We initially start with a screening of what's called a prick test, which is actually just a little tiny prick on your skin with several different types of foods, as well as the inhalants, which people tend to be most sensitive to give us a ballpark idea of what degree of sensitivity a person has. But then from there, we do what's called skin point in titration, which is basically an intradermal or a small injection just under the skin, similar to what the PPD that people are pretty used to getting on their arm. And we look for a little bleb. First, we make a little bleb about 4 millimeter in size, and then we watch it over about a 10-minute time period. And if a person is allergic to it, then it'll enlarge to a 5, 7, 9, 11 millimeter size measurable that we actually measure and record. So at the end of the time we're finished testing for ragweed, dust, pollen, mold, mildew, etc., we can figure out not only a person is maybe not allergic to something at all, or if they are, what degree, and that determines how we mix up the vaccine like I was talking about before. There is a blood test called a RAS test, or another name is ImmunoCAP, which is good in the standpoint of a person has a skin problem that you really can't do skin test with, small children, or just anxious about needles or whatever, which is good in that it's specific for the things it does show positive. It's accurate, but it misses a lot of the things that people are minimally sensitive to that might be just as important. So it's good, but not quite as accurate as the skin testing part of things. Well, typically this time of year, of course, when everybody's car or truck is turning yellow from the pollen because it's so heavy, they will come in and say, boy, I've been sneezing. Every time I turn around, I'll sneeze 5 to 50 times a day. My nose is running like a sieve. My throat's itching sometimes. My eyes are burning and stinging. I'm just miserable. I've tried this, I've tried that, and nothing seems to work. Make it go away. And so initially we do a pretty comprehensive history of frequency, times of year. Is this a year-round thing? Is it primarily spring and fall? Because typically back in the wintertime, we'll still see people who are having trouble when their problem is mostly interior, dust mites, mold, mildew, that type of thing, which is nearly impossible to get rid of, short of some various things we try to have them do within reason. it's not practical for some people to strip their entire carpet out and this type of thing. But bottom line is we then discuss with them the option of testing. Our testing basically revolves around the most common things in this area that give people trouble. And a perfect example is people who live here commonly have trouble with ragweed. Now, you probably heard years ago, pack up your sizes and go to Arizona. Well, that only worked about 6 months, because when you pack it up and you go to Arizona, you no longer have ragweed, but you have what's called Russian thistle, which is a similar type of pollen. And a person who has tendency to be allergic is going to be ultimately get allergic to whatever is available in Arizona as much as they are here, because the tendency to be allergic is somewhat inherited. If one parent has a problem, there's a 50% chance that any child will have trouble. If both parents have trouble, there's a 70% chance that any child, not just 5 children, 3 may have trouble and 2 may not. There's the occasional system where we find a person who's having trouble and they can't remember that their parents ever had trouble, but maybe their grandparents, they maybe skipped a generation type thing. And so then from there, we test them for the various things that they've mentioned specifically they feel like they have trouble with, plus the other potential things in the area that we know could give trouble. And then we come up with a plan in terms of, well, you're sensitive to this, 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 and this. We can mix you up some vaccine. We have sort of a graduated system of what we call build-up, where we start people off, even though we're doing somewhat of a rapid build-up. And frequently within a month or two, and usually by 3 months at least, we have patients already noticing a difference. And then if with a little time, 2, 3, 4 months, they're not noticing any change, we relook at things. Is there maybe something else involved, like foods? Foods are difficult to test for. They may or may not be positive, and foods are a little different in it. Most everybody has heard the peanut allergy story about the immediate anaphylactic reaction, where you can really serious to almost death type problems right away. But also there's another type of food allergy that's called delayed, where today being Wednesday, something you ate on Sunday might give you problems today, but not right away. And that could be in terms of just sort of GI problems, nose be kind of runny or stopped up or whatever. And this is a little harder to figure out, in that you almost have to take what you suspect out of the diet for a period of time, 6 weeks or so, see how they're doing, and then incrementally put things back into the diet. And if the symptoms come right back, then that's probably a villain. But once we kind of get people built up to a maintenance type of treatment, then they have, there's a period of time where most people feel, 3 to 4 years, maybe longer. If you've been on shots that long, you probably are at the point where you can go ahead and just stop. But what we do know, that even what we thought was permanent, like smallpox vaccine and all those, are not that way. And so I put it to patients that when we're getting to that point, if they feel like they'd like to try to stop their allergy vaccine, best way to figure it out is to start spreading out how frequently they take their injections. And so we go from 1 week to 2 weeks to 3 to 4. And if a certain person can go 4 to 6 weeks with no injections and are feeling fine with no problems, they're probably okay. And then sometimes 2 or 3 years later, they may come by and say, we'll start all up again. I like to restart. But others say, well, no, I've been doing great for years. And so there's probably a small percentage of patients who have some degree of permanency, but not that many.